Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is a snowy day. It's our first snow of the season. Winter has unofficially set in. It's not officially winter until mid-December. But it's a perfect day to make some soups. So we're gonna make a butternut squash soup, which we're gonna work on first. We're gonna make a mushroom barley soup and a blended vegetable soup. Not blended, grated vegetable soup. And then for dinner tonight, we're going to have a chicken rice soup. So the first three soups, the butternut squash, mushroom barley, and the vegetable soup, is ones that we're going to cook up and freeze. So those we can have throughout the winter whenever we want them for lunches or dinners. And the chicken rice soup is not one that is good from the freezer because the rice, once it's cooked, it'll just keep absorbing the moisture, the liquid. So it's one that is enjoyed the day that it's made. So that one is also perfect for a snow day to just stay inside, stay warm, bundle up. So let's get into this and let's get cooking. Okay, so I'm gonna try with each soup to have everything out and show you what you need. So the recipe does call for 1 medium butternut squash. These were pretty small, so I got 2. The recipe calls for 3 carrots. These are pretty small. I'm using 4. It needs 2 zucchinis. It does call for yellow squash. I forgot to buy it. I'm not running out to the store right now. 2 garlic. These are again pretty small, so I'm using 4. And I love the taste of garlic, so might as well use more. Some onion, barley, oil, salt, pepper, and paprika. So let's get to chopping and cooking. So the first thing I'm doing is I pulled out a bowl to be able to add all my chopped vegetables to it so that it's not taking up space on the board, and when it's ready to go into the pot, I can just pour it all in. So next I'm taking the zucchini, I am washing it, I am cutting off the top and the bottom of it, and then chopping it up. Now I'm not doing it very finely because I just need it to be small enough so that it doesn't take up the entire pot. And we're going to blend it up later on. So it doesn't have to be very small. I also took out a bowl for my compost, or it's actually going to go to the chickens. So any scrap pieces, peels, ends of things are going to go in there throughout the day as we're cooking. Once I am done with zucchini and I have that in the bowl that I set aside for the chopped vegetables, I'm going to get to peeling our butternut squash. And this in itself is a job. It is time consuming because it's not the easiest vegetable to peel. But this is how I decided to do it on this day. And once it is all peeled, I am cutting it in half and scooping out the insides. Okay, so if you feel like peeling is too hard, peeling and cutting up the butternut squash is too hard, then you can roast it on 350 for, like, cut it in half, roast it on 350 for 30 minutes, then let it cool and peel it and cut it then. Because peeling it once it's roasted is just removing the flesh from the skin, and it's a lot easier because the flesh is a little soft already. But if you want to skip the step of roasting, then you peel it instead. So do whatever feels easier for you. Once we have all the seeds scooped out, we can get to dicing this up into rough dice as well and adding it into our bowl with the zucchini. Now that I have the butternut squash cut up, we can actually start cooking it. So I'm going to go now according to what goes into the pot first, because I figured with the peeling, I never know how long it's going to take to peel and cut up the butternut squash. So I wanted to get that out of the way first. So next we're going to do the onion. So for the onion, the easiest way that I find to peel it, especially if we're going to end up dicing it up anyways, is to cut it in half and then peel back the skin. It's a lot easier this way than having to go around the entire onion when there's no end to it. So I cut it in half, I take the peel off, and then we're going to dice it up. Now, it doesn't have to be very finely diced. because it's gonna be a blended soup at the end of the day. So you don't have to go crazy and get it extra fine, extra small. Just a rough dice, perfectly fine. Okay, the onions and the garlic are gonna go in at the same time. So let's get this ready as well. So right now I'm just peeling the garlic and getting it ready to be added into the soup. Okay, so I've got an 8-quart pot here. I'm gonna get some oil in here. I'm gonna heat this up. We're gonna add the onion and garlic, and we're gonna let that saute until the onions are translucent. I am going to crush the garlic as I'm putting it into the pot. Okay, while our onions and garlic are sauteing, we're gonna prep our carrots. This is the last thing we have to prep. So for the carrots, I'm gonna peel them and then we're gonna dice it up. So you wanna dice it up to a size that you and your family will enjoy, and you'll see why in a moment. And for me, with this size carrots means cutting them into either circles or half moon. Now that it's all cut up, I'm gonna put it into a mesh bag and we're gonna add our barley to it as well. As you can see, I cut mine into half moons. If your carrots are bigger, I would suggest cutting them into quarters or even dicing them. Once we add the barley into the bag, I am going to tie the bag closed, and I'm going to add it to our vegetables to be added into our soup later on. So these onions are translucent and even a little bit golden already. So we can add in our vegetables and our carrots and barley that we prepped. I like to first put down a little bit of vegetables on the bottom, then add the boil bag with the carrots and barley, and then top it with the rest of the vegetables. I think that's good. Now we're going to add water. Now that it's quiet, I can talk. We're going to add water until it's 3/4 full. Let's give it a little bit of a mix. Not much, but good enough. I'm going to add some salt, black pepper, and a little bit of paprika. This will help with color. Mix this in. I'm going to let this come to a boil and then let it cook for 45 minutes before we move on to the next step. Okay, while we're waiting for our butternut squash soup to come up to a boil, we're going to get working on our mushroom barley soup. So for this, we need mushrooms and barley, 2 stalks of celery, we need 2 carrots, and again they're small so I'm using a bit more, 2 onions, 2 potatoes. Now over here I'm switching the recipe up a little bit. It is a dairy recipe, so it calls for butter and milk mixed with flour for the thickener. So I'm going to use a plant-based butter to make it parve, and I'm going to make a cornstarch slurry. I'm actually going to use tapioca starch instead of cornstarch with water to replace that milk, and then salt and pepper. I'm going to use white pepper for the soup. Now before I get chopping here, you might hear my water coming up for a boil. I'm going to make myself a coffee, and then we're going to get to chopping and getting this one on the stove and cooking. Okay, so for the mushroom barley soup, we're going to need 2 pots for it. We're going to start off with some barley in here. We're going to start off with 8 cups of water for the barley, and we might need to add more once we combine it all. We're also going to add in salt and pepper with the barley. Now we're going to get this cooking, and we're going to start with chopping our vegetables. Okay, the first thing that we're going to add, that we're going to start cooking down, will be the onions and celery. So we're going to get to chopping those up. Okay, so now when we're chopping the vegetables for this soup, we have to keep in mind that this is a chunky soup. It's not going to be blended at the end. So when you're cutting up the vegetables, you want to get it to a size that you would like it when you're eating it. So I like them not too big, not too small. I want them to hold up through the sauteing and cooking process. But I still want them small enough where when I take a spoon of the soup, I can get a bunch of different vegetables in the spoon at once. The butternut squash soup is bubbling. I'm going to let it simmer. I'm going to set a timer. Okay, now that we have all this cut up, I'm going to get a pot, which I don't know if it'll be big enough, but we're going to work with what I got. We're going to melt our butter in here. We're going to add our onions and celery. I'm going to let that start cooking down. Okay, so we're going to let that go until the onions are golden. Then we're going to add the potatoes and carrots. So let's get to prepping that. I missed the step for the mushrooms. So I think I'm going to add that before I add in the carrots and potatoes. So let me work on the mushrooms quickly before I finish off the carrots and potatoes. So you can use canned mushrooms. I just prefer to use fresh. I'm gonna leave the mushrooms in like bigger chunks because even though this is a favorite soup of my family, it was requested. Not everybody enjoys the mushrooms. They enjoy the flavor that it gives to the soup, but not to eat the actual mushrooms. So if it's big enough, they can pick it out. So for the onions and celery, the butter is still melting. So we're gonna wait to add the mushrooms. So we're gonna set this aside. We're gonna get back to our other vegetables. This feels like very few carrots. I think I'm gonna get another one out. Yeah, that carrot to potato ratio looks better. Our barley is boiling, so I lowered that heat. And I realized that I have a pot that's a little bigger than the one that I have been sauteing the onions and celery in. So I was just waiting for the butter to melt. But now we're gonna transfer it into the bigger pot because we have quite a bit of vegetables to still cook down. Let's get this back on the flame. And the onions are actually already translucent, so I think I'm gonna add in the mushrooms at this point. And then we can get our potatoes and carrots in here, so it'll be easier to get into the pot when it's time to add it. This is not big enough. I'm gonna use our bigger one that we used for our other soup. Okay, so now we're just waiting for our onions and celery to cook down a little bit before we add in our potatoes and carrots. Once we add our potatoes and carrots, we're gonna let that cook down for about a half an hour, and then we'll continue on and I'll bring you along for that step. So our butternut squash soup has cooked now for 45 minutes. We're gonna move on to the next step. So let me show you what we're gonna do. First thing, we're gonna get a bowl and we're gonna take out our bag with the carrots and barley. Gonna set that aside. And now we're gonna use a stick blender and blend this up. I feel like in the past I I peeled the zucchini because I don't know if you can see that green specks in it. That's the zucchini skin. And I used to not have it. It's usually just a nice orange color. Okay, so we're gonna open up our mesh bag. Ooh. Now we're just gonna take all of this and get it into, we're gonna get it into our, did not do a very good job with it today. So we're gonna take all this that was in the mesh bag, we're gonna add it back into the soup. And then we're gonna get this back onto the fire and we're gonna let this cook for another hour. And then I recommend mixing it every so often so that the barley doesn't stick to the bottom of the pot. Okay, now we're back to our mushroom barley soup. Now the barley has been cooking for a while already, and our vegetables have been cooking down for 30 minutes. So we're supposed to put the barley into the vegetables, but since we have a bigger pot for this, we're going to add everything in here. I'm happy that I added the additional carrots. Now we're going to let this cook until everything is tender. So the potatoes doesn't look done, so I think I'll give it another like 20 minutes. And I think they should be ready then. And then we'll finish this off. Our mushroom barley soup is almost done. So we're gonna get the cornstarch slurry ready. So we're gonna make a slurry of equal amounts of cornstarch and water. I'm gonna mix this together. Okay, the cornstarch is fully dissolved. We're also gonna add a little bit more water to the soup because it does go for a 3/4 cup of milk, and this doesn't equal that. I'm gonna pour this in. Can you even see what I'm doing? Yes. And we're gonna add a bit more water. I'm gonna let this cook for another like 10 minutes. I'm not gonna add more water because I know from experience that when I reheat it, I usually add more water. So we're gonna let this cook for 10 more minutes. And then this will be done. Okay, this mushroom barley soup should be done now. It has thickened up nicely. Give this a little stir. I'm gonna taste this now. I want to get a little bit of everything, so I'll get a mushroom, potato, carrot, celery, onion. I believe I got everything in here. That's a lot, and it's really hot. So give me a minute. Wow, tastes delicious. I just want to taste just a little bit of the broth. Try to get just a little bit of the broth. Taste for spices. Yeah, it's perfect. So the celery still has a little bit of a crunch. The potatoes are perfect. So this, when I reheat it, the celery will soften a little bit. Going through the freezing process will soften it a little bit too. So we're going to let this cool off a little bit. We're going to divide it into containers, and then we'll get going on our vegetable soup. And our butternut squash is almost done as well. So we're going to give this a taste test as well. And we're going to let this cool as well a little bit before we divide it. So this will have the barley and chunks of carrots. Let's taste this for spices. Carrot is nice and soft and sweet. Delicious. I would maybe add a little bit more salt to it. I'm gonna taste this again. Yeah, that's better. Delicious. Okay, gonna let these cool and then divide it. Okay, so for these soups, I got square deli containers because when they sit in the freezer, they fit a lot better. There's no dead space. So our soups have cooled off enough. And the mushroom barley soup, the barley has actually absorbed so much more of the liquid. And that is why I didn't add more, because I know that when I reheat it, I will want to add more then. we got 3 containers, less than I expected. There's just a little bit left in here, but it's not going to fill up a whole nother container. So I'll just divide it between these few. And now for our butternut squash soup. It's cooled down enough that we can divide it. And this one I think that did make more than 3. Just to make it even, I'm going to take out a little bit of each. Once I have all the soup divided, and for this one I actually got 5 containers, I can place the cover over them and then cover it all the way, make sure that it's sealed and ready for the freezer. Now I can write up my labels, and I have these labels that they hold up very well on the containers or bags or whatever it is, if it's in the freezer or the fridge or the pantry. And the good thing about these labels is that they dissolve in water. So when I'm done using, for these they're disposable containers, so it doesn't really matter. But when I use these labels on my mason jars, they just wash right off. They just dissolve. Just let the water run over it and it dissolves. So I'm just writing whatever soups I have and the date that I made it and putting those labels onto the containers. Now that these 2 soups are divided and labeled, they are ready to go in the freezer. So I'm taking as many as I can to my garage where I have my standalone freezer. I'm going to keep it in there. Okay, our next soup we'll be making is our vegetable soup. And I'm realizing now barley is going into every one of them. I'm okay with that. So for this we have 2 celery, 2 carrots. One is very big, one is pretty small. Equals it out. Zucchini, an onion, a parsnip, 3 potatoes. And it does call for half a sweet potato, but these are pretty small. My theme today. So we're going to use 2. And then salt and pepper. So let's get into cooking this. I'll show you what we do. First thing we're going to do is peel our potatoes. I see now I forgot to pull out one ingredient, which is actually a spice, garlic powder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pot. I'm going to cut up the potatoes a little bit so that they cook up a little bit faster. So what we're going to do with the potatoes is we're going to cover it with water, and we're going to add salt, pepper, and some garlic powder. And we're going to let this cook until the potatoes are soft. While we got that going, we're going to start sauteing our onions. So let's peel and dice this up. I should really take this out to the chicken so that I can refill it. The snow has actually turned to rain. And I'm wet now. Still a perfect weather to be in the kitchen and making soups. Okay, so I'm going to get some oil into another pot. We're going to get that heating up and we're going to add our onions. We're going to start letting them brown. Okay, now for the rest of our vegetables. I'm going to peel our parsnip, zucchini, and carrot. I'm thinking I have 1 more zucchini, a few little carrots, and some celery. I might as well just use it up. And we'll have a little bit more soup out of this. Okay, our onions are almost ready. So we got to get going with our vegetables. What we're going to do is move things over. I'm going to get out my food processor. I'm going to get my shredder blade on there. And we're just going to shred our vegetables. The onions already have some beautiful color. So now we're just going to get all of our vegetables in there. We're going to mix this and we're going to let this cook down for about a half an hour until the vegetables are nice and limp. And by then our potatoes should be ready, and we're going to combine it and finish it off. So our potatoes have been cooking for 20 minutes now. They do feel nice and soft. So I'm going to take it off the heat. We're going to blend this up with our immersion blender. I'm going to blend this up now. Okay, this is nicely blended now. Now let me bring you closer to our vegetables so you can see what it's looking like. They're nice and soft. It has released some liquid. We're going to add in some barley. Maybe add a bit more since we did more vegetables than the recipe called for. And now we're going to add our blended potato mixture in here. And I think I'm going to add a bit more water in here. I'm going to use this pot actually to get a little bit more of this out. And I think I'm going to add a bit more salt and pepper in here. Maybe I'll add a bit more of the garlic powder as well. We're going to let this cook down a little bit and then we're going to taste it. Okay, so it's been about 30 minutes that this has been simmering. Let me see the barley. Yeah, it looks good, especially keeping in mind that we're still going to be reheating this because this is going into the freezer. So it doesn't have to be 100% cooked through. Let's taste this. I think just a little bit more salt. Mix that in. Taste it again. Yeah, that's better. Again, we're gonna let this cool off. So I had tasted the soup and walked away because it was good. And I forgot to turn off the heat. So this cooked down a little bit more. But at this point, it is cool enough that we can divide it and get it into the freezer. It's actually still hot. I'm just gonna let the cover sit on top of it and we're gonna let it cool off a bit more. Once it's cool off, I'll close it, label it, get it into the freezer, and we'll see you in a moment when it's dinner time and we're gonna make our chicken rice soup. Okay, it is close to dinner time and we're gonna start making our chicken rice soup. So I've got all the ingredients out that we're gonna use. I have some chicken here that I've defrosted. I have some homemade chicken broth that I made last week and I am super proud. It came out really good. All jelly, full of collagen. That's great. I forgot when I was doing the vegetable soup that I am making this soup as well. I ran out of carrot. I used up all the carrots and all the celery. So I ran to the store and I bought some more carrots. This is some celery from our garden that I have chopped up and put in the freezer. So I'm going to use this instead of fresh because I didn't want to buy a whole nother celery stalk because I wouldn't get through it. We're going to need some black pepper. Oh, I'm skipping the spices then. Kosher salt, smoked paprika, oregano, garlic powder. We're going to need an onion, rice, and some oil. So let's get the chopping and cooking. We're going to start with the onion, carrots, and celery. So we're going to dice those up. Okay, so this is all the prep work we're doing. So let's turn the camera around and we're going to get to cooking. Okay, so I preheated the pot already. I'm going to add in a bit of oil. Going to add our onions, carrots, and celery. We're going to let this cook down until our onions are translucent. Okay, I think the onions are translucent enough. I forgot that I needed to mince the onion, so I did that off camera. We're going to add that into our mix here. I'm going to let this cook for about a minute until the garlic is nice and fragrant. It smells delicious already. Look at this beautiful stock. So we're going to add some of that in here. We're going to add some additional water. We're going to add in our chicken. I'm just going to separate them so that they cook a bit more evenly. We're going to add rice and our spices. So we're adding the oregano, the garlic, the kosher salt, and black pepper. And the smoked paprika we will add at the end. Now we're going to let this cook for about 20 to 30, 20 to 25 minutes. I'm gonna let it come to a boil first, and then we're gonna lower the heat and set the timer. Okay, so our cooked chicken is cooked through. So we're gonna take this out now. We're gonna continue letting the soup cook, but we're gonna remove the chicken. I'm gonna let it rest for 5 minutes, and then we're gonna shred it up. Okay, so our chicken has cooled a little bit. So we're gonna shred this up. Now you can do it however your family likes it. Shred it, cube it. You can do it with a fork. You can do it in the bowl of a mixer. It's really up to you. I'm just gonna do it like this. I like that it has, when I do it like this, that it has different size chunks. Now that we've got all our chicken shredded, this has cooked some more. Add this back in. We're gonna add our smoked paprika now. Give this a mix, and we can turn off the heat. This is done and ready to eat. Now I don't have any green onions, but if you do have any, we're gonna sprinkle that on top. So we're just gonna add a little bit for myself. I'm gonna make a bowl for myself, and then I'm gonna serve up my family. And again, if you have green onions, serve that on top. Let me taste this. I'm gonna get some of the chicken, carrots, celery, onion, rice, a little bit of everything. Delicious. Okay, so like I said, I'm gonna serve up some dinner for my family. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the like and subscribe button if you want to see more. I'll see you in the next one.